Welcome to this podcast. We're so excited that you're joining us today. We've got Jeremy Carruthers and Kyle Philippi and myself, and we're just going to talk a little bit about Jeremy's story. You've been here for, I think, almost a year, over a year.
Right at a year, yeah.
And so, tell us a little bit about maybe your journey with Far-Flung, maybe pre-Far-Flung, how you found out about it.
Yeah, so I had friends in Far-Flung when I was at the university. It was very much in its infancy then. I think you had done like one trip by the time that me and you talked, Kyle. And Kyle asked me to come along and record an album in Ecuador. I had done a couple small recording things for him for some live production. I remade Under the Sea.
To the words of Welcome to Lee.
Welcome to Lee, yeah. I remade that entire orchestration, which was fun. Which I can't find that, by the way. If you have that, I'd like to hear it. I've looked through my drives, like I apparently
I've
don't
got
have
the
session.
yeah.
But side note, so he invited me to Tres Hermanos and proceeded to ask me to go to Guatemala to record the Together project. And that was
2015.
2015. So that was 7 years ago ish, 6 years ago. And we recorded that album, and 7 years ago, I'm here in the office still recording albums.
But you didn't. It wasn't a trajectory you had really planned.
No, I mean, no, it was just like it was a constant in my life from that moment. You know, you were constantly reaching out for new things, and I thought that was cool. I liked the purpose of it. I believed in your vision for Far-Flung, and it was a place where, I could use creative expression, for good purposes. So I was always very much involved, even though I think some people are like intentionally like wanting to get in Far-Flung and more involved. And me, it was like you kind of pulled me in, and it was just like a natural fit. And you just kind of, I don't know if there was ever any formal conversations up until about a year ago. But it was just.
I mean, even when we had those formal conversations, you were already here, like on my doorstep in a box with a little note that says, "Please take care of this baby." I can no longer. No, you just kind of showed up here at the office one day.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't recruit you.
No. We were in Virginia, and then me and my wife had talked, and behind closed doors, we were just like, yeah, we're here. This is what we're doing, and we're going to stay committed to it, and we're going to be here forever. And within like 6 months, really through just, a crazy season of dreams and visions and words from God, and just revelations and realizations, all of the things, in a matter of 6 months. Like, we're going to stay here forever. And then 6 months later, it was like, we really feel like God is calling us to leave, like tonight. And we didn't understand everything, and we thought, we'll be back. Nobody even know we're gone. Let's just be obedient tonight. And people have asked, like, man, that was crazy. Like, you left everything, and like, the story is just, it's weird, even to me. And there's a lot of things that still kind of questionable or up in the air. I don't even understand. People say, like, well, how could you take that risk? Or how could you just, and it was like, well, me and my wife got to a point where, you talk about risk management, the risk of walking away from everything and alienating people, or people not understanding, or walking away from home and healthcare and salary. And it's like, man, that's a risk. But I kind of knew what the risks that were associated with that. And I kind of knew like the struggles that were associated with that. But on that, I think it was July 7th, when we really felt like God was pushing us to leave, like immediately, I knew what the risk associated was with walking away. I didn't know the risk of being disobedient. Like I didn't know what it would be like to live in disobedience to God. Not saying that I've always been perfectly obedient, but there was enough that God had said and done over a period of months that, you know, I looked at Becca and I said, okay, as confusing and as weird as this is, if we stay here, like for another minute, if we stay here, we're in direct disobedience, right? Like we know that now. We were confused for a couple months and wondering. Now we know it. And me and my wife both agreed, like, yes. So we were just like, pack it up, boys. You know, like, and we loaded up the car. My wife was pregnant. We had 2 small children. And we just loaded up the car at 10 p.m. and drove overnight to the only place we knew to go, which was about 25 minutes from here.
Are you saying that the risk of unknowing, this, you know, the risk of jumping into something, the unknown, is less scary than the risk of staying somewhere you believe is disobedience?
Absolutely. And that's like, man, there's so much to the story. I mean, if I ever wrote a book about it, it'd be like 1,000 pages, you know? Like, there's so much to the story that, yes, there was a legitimate fear, like a legitimate fear that was like, you gotta wonder, you know, you live your whole life under the protection, or just, I can only think of like these, like the cleft of the rock or under the wing, or, you know, and when those things are then removed, you know, or you remove yourself from that place, and the how exposed you feel, or how accessible you feel to quote unquote the enemy, or, you know, quote unquote darkness or whatever. Like, man, we just experienced some crazy things where we were like, man, if this is a taste of what it's like to live in disobedience, we're done. We're done with it. And a lot of it is like intimate details I won't even like go into, but just like very real things, like not sleeping, like just days and days of just experiences that, you know, you're like, what is going on? You know? And part of it was, I remember one night I was just praying, and, you know, growing up, you just learn, like, plead the blood of Jesus and pray things, and we just felt like this fear in our own home, and just really, really weird stuff. And I just felt like my prayers were just, you know, hitting the floor. And I just felt like, had this kind of revelation, is like, I don't think that this is like the presence of evil as much as it is the absence of closeness and nearness to the Father, right? So like I've heard it said, like in these big theological and scientific debates, like darkness is just the absence of light, right? It's a privation. Right. It's not its own thing. It's just a thing that happens when there's no light. And whereas evil is like, God didn't have to create evil. It's just the absence of him. Like, whatever. And so we really felt like we lived this very short season in this emptiness of like if you're going to stay here, almost like God is not here. Right. And I'm careful when I say that. I think that it was intentional from the Father. I think that it was a very real, tangible example for us of what we would live under if we continued in disobedience.
And maybe he wouldn't have had to do that if you would have just took a risk earlier.
Yeah, and I beat myself up for that for a long time. I was like, oh,
sorry.
man.
I didn't mean to hammer that in.
No, because it was like, oh man, well, how long have we been disobedient? Or how? Right. And I just, I was talking to somebody at Emanate, and they're like, man, I've been disobedient for years now. And I'm just like, relax, man. Like, like God,
he's got you.
Yeah, like there's so much grace. He's not like unaware of what we know and don't know, right? So if I'm like, man, God, I really want to do what you want me to do, but I'm not sure, and I do that for 2 years, I don't think he's like, right. Yeah, he's looking, he's like, yeah, he's not sure.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's that grace. I think he knows and he understands that. And I think that it came to a point for us, though, that, like I said, when we looked at each other and we said, okay, we haven't been sure, but now we are, right?
Right.
So now it's a clear choice, obedience or not. And we convinced ourselves in that moment to be obedient by saying, well, we'll be back. Maybe we'll just be gone for 2 days.
Wow.
Maybe this, maybe that, maybe God will work and then, you fast forward like almost a year and a half later, and it's like, if he would have told me, I would have been gone and like left the way I left, and I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
Let me just be honest. It was just that moment going, okay, it's either obedience or disobedience. So I want to be obedient, and then, convincing ourselves, this will just fix everything and we'll be back soon. Nobody will ever know. And then God orchestrating everything the way that he did, so that I'm still sitting in this office and in this chair. And it really is a story of a lot of grace.
Yeah.
And man, I remember when we first got here, just the confusion, the heaviness, and then since then, I mean, experiencing this, like really, really, really experiencing the Father for the first time in my life. Like really, really at 34 years old, like really, really experiencing the Father for the first time. And it took him all of the things that happened in this crazy, stupid thing that we did, packing up at 10 p.m. and driving 8 hours overnight on a whim, really. Stripping me of every title. I mean, we just started a business that was like super successful, and I had put a bunch of money into that, and I was like this type of pastor, and I was doing this, and I was, all of these things, to driving here and sitting in my in-laws' house and literally being nothing for like the first time in my life. Like, I'm not working on anything. I'm not any type of title. So like, it was this crazy season where God just like completely interrupted everything. Took me from doing a lot and being a lot to doing nothing and basically being nothing, and just stripping me down to like really, really like this place where I had to search and figure out who I was for the first time.
Wow.
And what I found was that I was like simply a child of God.
So I chuckled earlier to what?
I said, which is enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is it. And now that's the context. That's the foundation from which everything else happens. So it's like, how do you not get caught up in the rat race like I was, or like, and doing it? It's like, because at the end of the day, it doesn't change. It doesn't add or take away to who I am.
Right.
I'm just a son.
So I chuckled earlier because it just made me think, like, you were talking about obedience versus disobedience, and I was reminded of like Saul. I was reminded of so many stories in the Bible where like obedience was key, right? And I think it was Brian that was talking about this the other day. He said, sometimes we do a good thing, but that good thing is not always the will of God, right? And so like you mentioned, you were in ministry, right? You were doing a good thing, right? You had a business supporting your family. You were doing a really good thing, but it wasn't necessarily the thing that God had for you in this season. And sometimes it's like there's this fear or hesitation to do that thing that God is calling you to do because there's a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, one thing I know for sure about my Father in heaven is that he doesn't give a rip about what I do if I don't have a clear view of who I am and who he is.
Wow.
That's it.
Wow.
Like, to the point that like, So a lot of times when you're in church work, right? Like, it's like the church work becomes the ultimate thing. Building the kingdom becomes like the ultimate thing.
Or a kingdom.
Or a kingdom, right? But to be less cynical, building the kingdom becomes
Right.
the ultimate thing. And it's like, man, all the stories we hear in the Bible, all the parables that Jesus gave, the lost coin, the lost sheep, like all of these stories point me back to a father that's like so concerned with just like the individual, like so concerned with just the one. So like, and it's very easy to get caught up in that, like doing and doing and doing and doing. And it's like, man, I just went through and am still going through this beautiful season of just being. For the first time in my life, I'm just being a son. I'm just being a child of God. And completely indifferent to doing much of anything.
Which I think there's a great argument that could be made that you can accomplish more in that mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's just readjusting our perspective. Because like right now, right? So the Jeremy of 2021, if I would have continued the Jeremy that I was compared to now, my kids would have been being raised by a completely different father. Like I'm a completely different father now that I understand who I am.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which makes them a completely different son and daughter.
Right. So you say like, man, you could even accomplish more. And I agree with that. But all I can think about and all I've thought about for the last year and a half is like, dude, the grace of God. You know, that this happened when my kids were 3.
Wow.
You know, my oldest kid was 3. Like, and not 15. Like, that's the grace of God because I don't know what I would have taught them, like, intentionally or unintentionally, or what they would have learned just watching me. But I would much rather them turn out to be who I am now than who I was 2 years ago. Everything has changed for me. Everything. And I used to have anxiety issues. Just gone. I get stressed out every once in a while. It's not like it was. You know what I mean? There's a difference between like getting stressed and overwhelmed in moments and living under the constant persecution and oppression of anxiety. Like I lived that. I used to talk about it. Like as I taught and as I spoke, like just open about it. It's gone. Like, there's so many other things, but it all goes back to shifting my perspective to realize what's important. And it's the closeness and the nearness to the Father, the understanding of who He is, the understanding of my own identity. And in the song we put on Take a Risk, the All You Ever Wanted Was My Heart, there's a line that said, I was told I was just a servant, but when I came home, you met me on the road, ran to me with the ring and a robe, and threw a party to let everybody know. Like, that's the testimony for me.
Yeah.
It's like this realization. It's like, oh, man. Like, you know, we all go through those pig pen moments, and we're like, you know, I guess I'll just go back to the Father. You know, I guess I'll just go back to what I knew, or like I guess I'll just go back and here's who I am. I'll just be a servant. Like, this is all that I am. And then you have this encounter with the Father where you're like, I guess I'll just come and serve. And He's like, man, serve. I'm like, here's the ring. Like, this is the signet ring. Like, I give you my authority. Like, I cover your shame. And we're about to celebrate you. And it's like, whoa. Like, you know,
Yeah.
like, and that's kind of like, I heard somebody teaching about it, and I don't know the ins and outs of it, so I may be saying something wrong here, but this is the way I remembered it, is that some of the language that is used in the Greek during the prodigal son story, like, is almost like the father was interrupting the son with his kisses, and that he put his weight on the son. So he probably had this whole speech prepared. It was like, Father, I've sinned, I've done so wrong, and now I'm returning, and I'll do whatever you ask me to do, and I'll stay in line. And it's like, he just wouldn't, like, the father just wouldn't stop kissing him. And he's like, no, just let me say my thing. Just let me, and it's just like, please. And it's like, man, the father was just happy, and then just putting it, just embracing him. And it's like, if you've ever been embraced, like with somebody with that desperate embrace, there's like a heaviness to it. You're almost holding someone up, or you're holding each other up, and just how the burden that the son carried, his new burden became the love of the father. And that's it, man. Like that's like, man, it's like, you know, you can grow up in it. You can grow up hearing those things, and it's just like, I think your brain is trained to hear certain parts of it. Like, you hear that story your whole life, and I'm like, well, the father is good, but I'm still scum. I'm just the, like, snow-covered dung sinner saved by grace, but the father, he's just good. And it's like, now I look at that story, and I'm like, man, like the father thinks I'm awesome. Like, he really, really likes me. You know?
Yeah.
And that's the Jeremy that is now raising his kids. So, like, that Jeremy didn't exist 2 years ago. So who knows, you know? I know that I'm proud of that. I'm glad about that. But
I mean, the timing, you know, God is just constantly like bamboozling us into his plan.
oh yeah,
And the timing of it, you know, January 2020, this is pre-COVID. Me and Brian are writing the kids' books, and this is like January 7th, like right after the new year. Things aren't really getting going. I'm just at home, and I'm like thinking about the Muppets, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we could do a show. Now, it was a lot smaller scale than what it ends up being. I thought on our trips we bring a few puppets and we do little storylines and just, you know, and so I'm thinking logistically, okay, if we're going to do this, we're going to put money into it. We're going to put money into puppets. We're going to like do a proof of concept that this is a good thing. We can't put a bunch of money into puppets. And I called this big puppet company out in LA that do like television puppetry. And they're like, we actually surprisingly don't have any projects right now. And we really want to do yours. So they gave me this crazy discount. We paid like 20% on 2 puppets than what they were going to normally cost. And so I was like, okay, we'll do mine because my character's like the leader of the crew. And I mean, I carry things. And what would be another one? Well, I really think that Jeremy, like we could a great character out of Jeremy, and we could carry and banter back and forth. So put the money in. I need a Jeremy the Raccoon Puppet. I need a Kyle the Otter Puppet.
which I was originally supposed to be a beaver. I think just because they're
it was a beaver. You're right. We went back and forth.
And I was like, man, you know, you see beaver, and it's like, you just think,
He's got like a trapper hat
hi
on.
y'all, you know, and I'm just like, this is not, it's not really
You said,
me.
I feel like I need to be a character that can survive out in the wild and in the city.
Right.
And then you're like a raccoon.
Raccoon, that's it. This is what's so funny about that is it's like these one of those things, like you just look back and you're like, life is so weird. Literally within it had to be 2 days of you reaching out about making a puppet of me and designing an animal character. I had watched a documentary on raccoons.
For those just listening, he just hit his head on an elephant statue.
Which Tobin did that last week.
Oh, he did?
Yeah. But like, what are the odds? And really what it was, the documentary was about how raccoons can thrive in urban environments. I don't know why I watched this. I don't know why it was interesting to me. But 2 days later, you call me and be like, well, we need to be something that can thrive in urban environments. And I'm like, raccoon. Like, I literally just watched the documentary.
And for like 10 years, I've been making fun of the fact that your hands are on the small side.
Yeah.
And
which I pointed out first. I beat you to that.
Yeah,
I sent him a picture of a raccoon
always talking
with
about
its hand up and it's all tiny.
And so when he's like, we're texting back and forth, I really think it needs to be raccoon. And then I said, I text you a picture of Raccoon's hands. I said, you do have dumb hands, though.
You do have dumb hands, though.
So we order this thing in January. They take 6 weeks to turn around, but then COVID hits in March, shut down, all the stuff. Their staff goes under, like all this stuff happens. So it's just like delay. It's just like two guys working on these puppets. So I'm just kind of waiting, writing out, like plotting out the whole season, what it's going to be. And the season's going to be Kyle the Otter is in the treehouse by himself doing missions work with his missionary friends, but it starts growing so much that he needs a team. And by the end of season 1, the last episode's about a whole treehouse full of people, and they take all of Kyle's responsibilities, and he's upset. He has nothing to do. And then he realizes, oh, I'm so thankful that I have a team. So that's what we write that in January 2020. That's the arc for the first season. So Jeremy just shows up here. Of course, I can't even afford to have Jeremy on the team. And we're like gearing up to start this show. And
well, I was here. When I first got here, I was actually like, well, we're here for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. And we're just waiting to go back. Mm-hmm. And then we never felt like released to go back. We never really knew what to do. And like, I was like, okay, well, I got to do something. So I'm like, maybe I'll just do DoorDash while I'm waiting. I don't want to go like get a job because I'm going to be going back to Virginia soon. I don't know when. And so I was like, well, let me get on Door. And like literally, I remember as I'm getting like, how do you do DoorDash? Like, is that a thing? You texted me and you were like, hey, I got some work for you. And I was like, I'm actually in Tennessee. You didn't even know. And I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell you.
Yeah, because I had already got the Kyle the Otter puppet, so I could start filming.
Yes. And I was like, well, I mean, and you were like, oh, shoot. I'm like, I'm in Tennessee. And I was like, no, I got my stuff. And you're like, well, I got space in the office. You can come set up if you want. So I'm like, okay. So, and then what's funny about that is the day that I got to the office is the same day that the Jeremy the Raccoon puppet got to the office.
Yeah. So it should have took 6 weeks. It took 7 months to get his puppet, and it arrives on FedEx. The day he's setting up in the office, I come in with the box. Jeremy the Raccoon and Jeremy the Human started on the same day.
Which is really weird. And we've talked about how the storyline for the show that you wrote in January, like, coincided with our life. We have an episode about making room in the office, which is literally as we were doing these voiceovers, we're just laughing like, this is the show that you wrote months ago, and we're living this show.
We do the song, Let's Make Room, and we have to make a bunch of room for Gary the Rhino because there's no room. And then we record the audio. Then we usually do the footage a few months later. By the time we're doing the footage, we've run out of room and we're knocking walls out of the office. Like, so we put it in the actual song.
Yep.
Yeah. So that was all that was weird. And I was going to tell you, like, season 2, you need to write how we all become millionaires. Yeah.
What do we do with all this money?
We're just like waiting around.
We're loaded. We got money. We got lots of money.
Yeah, that would be his.
So, but it has been coinciding, and literally what happened on the kids show is happening in real life, and we do have a team. We did 10 years of Far-Flung with me as the only full-time staff, and now
we've got
me,
full-time,
you, Brian, people. Ashley,
6 people.
Warbe's here part-time. Steven's now here full-time, and I'm still getting now I'm getting text messages from people being like, oh, hey, I might quit my job. And I'm like, okay, we could put a balcony in.
And let's just reiterate that we said this about my story earlier. I would love to say that you devised some master plan to grow Far-Flung and to have everything. I would love to say that we had everything figured out. Bro, this, like, people loading up in the middle of the night, people quitting jobs, people getting fired from jobs, people, like, all of these things. none of this was planned. All of it just happened.
Right. Yeah, and we're still not paying.
Right.
It's not, it's completely out of our hands. You guys keep coming on like, hey, we want to help. And I'm like, we just don't have the budget. That's fine.
I was thinking about it earlier. Like, I literally for 4 months, 3 or 4 months, or no, more than that, just came Monday through Friday. Just morning to evening. And like we never talked. It was just like, I'm just here. Mm-hmm. So it was like there was like one big decision that me and my wife had to make, and it was like all the other decisions were made. You know what I mean? Like, it all just happened. Yeah, it's really, really like.
Eventually we had the movie moment. Like, if there's ever a like portrayed Far-Flung movie, we had a scene that like all of us are played by these like big characters, and Brian would be played by Matthew McConaughey. And Brian is now he's deciding to make the move. He's like, I'm coming here in 2 months, and Jeremy's just kind of here.
I've been here for 4 or 5 months at this point.
Yeah, and so like Brian's like, I think afraid you're gonna leave, or he's like, I feel like you're supposed to be part of this movement.
It's all of us. We're all gonna do it. And I had been here for like 4 or 5 months.
He has conversations with me. He has conversations with you, me, you. I'm like, I don't know. He's here, and finally he's like, we need to talk. So like we all sit down. And he's like, bro, like. I feel like you're supposed to be part of this, and you're like, yeah. And
he's like, I'm coming here. Like, if I'm coming here, like, are you down to do this? Are we gonna make a run at this? And like, he just kept going. And I was like, bro, I've been here.
I'm already here.
Like,
he slams the desk.
It got way more dramatic than it was. I think it's funny. All the stories that we tell are me yelling at Brian. And like none of them I actually yelled. It just got
your voice got like higher in
pitch.
Like
you told that story at Lee at the chapel. He's
relax.
Like, the guy back there on the keys yelled at me, relax. Like, it's okay. Okay, first of all, I didn't yell.
You probably said, dude, relax.
Yeah.
You were talking to like 4 people.
Yeah, it was to everyone. It wasn't to him.
I'm pretty sure you're saying that every day.
But I do. I just said it in here.
He told me yesterday, relax, bro.
It was just relax, bro. That's where I'm at. And that's the funny thing is like, I just thought about this. When people start getting worked up and doing things, it's just like, are you still a child of God? Yes or no? Yes. Okay, then relax, because that's what I feel like. Like, right. That's the full version.
Right.
So you were in Brazil for Together Project and
Two, yeah.
And
Together Project.
Together. Get it? All right. And we found out something interesting about Jeremy, that Jeremy is terrified of bats.
Bro.
And on the spot, like we're filming. Yeah. I've never seen you like get in that mode.
People know. Like this is not like a new thing that happened in the Amazon. Like, no. I have like Chris and Caleb, people back home, if they're listening to this, they're like cracking up right now. Yeah, I had a traumatic event as a child.
Oh, you got an origin story too?
Yeah. We used to take rubber bands because we had like these big street lights in the parking lot.
Wait. Your parents weren't shot in an alley after a theater ring.
No. And we had those big street lights in the parking lot. So all these these bats would come fly around them. You could hear them chirping. So when we were little kids, we were like, little kid thing. Had rubber bands, and we'd take paper and like fold it like a V and put it around the rubber band. And we'd take it and shoot it up in the air. Well, these bats, they echolocate on the pieces of paper, and they would grab the paper and then let it go. And we thought it was hilarious, like how we tricked them, like stupid bats, right? So one time, I take this rubber band, I shoot it up. It goes up in the air, and it's coming back down. And as I'm going to catch it, this bat, like sideswipes my face. And like I full on touch this bat, like grab it in midair and freak out. Like, dude, ruined my life. So yeah, that like ever since that moment, like, have you ever felt a bat? I have. Yeah, because so you don't get it.
I mean, this man was ready to jump ship, literally.
They're
at
like
that
rats
point.
with wings. Ace Ventura.
Yeah. All right,
Lifeless beady eyes.
this podcast, man, we're picking up sponsors left and right, and we've got a ad here. I'll have Jonathan read the ad
Oh no,
from our sponsor.
I feel like I've been set up.
Don't read it ahead of time.
Just read it.
Just read
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Okay.
it's cold
I gotta clear my throat.
because we haven't been podcasting for 30 minutes.
All right, the Far-Flung Tin Can podcast is powered by Atacucho cookies, the best cookies you've ever had in your life. Your bread of life, that is. Atacucho cookies are handmade in Quito, Ecuador. I don't know why I'm laughing. For years, this bakery has been churning out oogie, what? Gooey goodness that warms your soul. And the best part is free delivery. Mamma mia, that's amazing. Visit atacuchocookies.co to try out all the amazing flavors. Every order of $100 or more gets a free Atacucho. That can't talk. Every order of $100 or more gets a free Atacucho cookie.
You get a free shirt.
Oh,
Like,
you
just
get-
let me finish it.
Can't talk today. All right, let's try it one more time. There's gonna be a lot of cutting.
We
and
got the
editing.
shirt part. Keep going. No, it's getting.
Yeah, don't go back.
We want it.
There's tons
raw.
of surprise information when you visit the site. So go visit atacuchocookies.co today. And don't forget the Atacucho Cookies signature jingle. Hit us with it, Jeremy.
Oh, gosh.
Q. Whatever it is.
Cookies, cookies. Yes, they are. Cookies, cookies. Rah, rah, rah. That's all I got.
Atacuchocookies.co. These cookies are life.
Spell Atacucho.
I can't. That's why I keep
You're
laughing.
reading it. Look at the paper and say the letters.
Literally, every time I look at this word, it's got like 13.
You're like, everybody go to
atacuchocookies.co.
Okay.
Every time I get there, it's
Please
like,
don't cut up this ad. I'll
There
just
is
give
a
it in
lot
its
of
entirety.
C's in that. Let me see that.
look at that.
There's a lot
I
of
mean,
C's
I didn't name
in
the
that
neighborhood.
website. ATUCUCHOCOKIES.co. There's C's and O's all
It sounded
over
like
this.
somebody dropped a golf ball on a keyboard.
That's
what it looks like.
These cookies are life. I wasn't ready for the jingle part. I'm sorry.
It's all right. I was trying to catch you off guard.
The first thing I went to was for the best cookies in the whole wide world.
Visit my cookies.
AtacuchoCookies.co.
They're
That's
also
the
made of
first
memory
jingle.
foam.
My pillow. All right.
My pillow. Every time I'd read ahead, I start laughing because I'm like, I can't do that.
That's why I told you not to read ahead. We wanted to get the.
The full effect.
You need to see the Island Floats one as well.
Islandfloats.co.
Yeah, I don't know if this episode is this episode before the Take a Risk one or after.
After.
Okay, so the viewers have already heard, the listeners have already heard the island.
Islandfloats.co and AtacuchoCookies.co. ATUCUCHO.
Someone's going to listen to this and be like, Warbe has no idea how to read.
I think everyone listening to this is going to think. Spell Atacucho. I don't know how.
I have no idea. What are these foreign letters?
All right.
So how do we get back from that?
So you're a producer, singer, songwriter.
Extraordinary.
Yeah.
Dancer.
Dancer. I did not
Ballet
know that.
artist.
Ballet artist? Do you say ballet artist?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I know you've had some really cool collabs in the past. And now you've done a lot of work with Farflung. I walked in the other day and all I hear is duh, 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 duh.
Yeah, you
duh,
thought I was
duh.
making the VeggieTales theme over
Yes.
again? What was, no, what was that?
What were you working on?
I don't know.
The
Something.
Africa stuff?
No, it was the Gary.
Kyle sends me these, like, songs, and instead of paying $35 for them, he's like, will you just remake this in your own way?
You look at like these royalty free songs, and it's like if you want it for broadcast, which our shows are on TV now, it's like to have a stupid song. You
Just
have to pay
for 10 seconds.
Yeah, $350 to have the rights forever to play it. So I'm like, hey, can you make a stupid song?
So yeah,
And he kills it.
changing the world.
When almost every trip, well, not maybe every trip, but there's been so many trips where like we have like that moment, like where you think back on the trip, and it's always like you never know it's going to be that moment. And I think of like when we were in Pemba in the bush and we were looking at the stars. Remember we had like just like a life talk. Mm-hmm. I feel like every trip there's like that. It's such a subtle moment. You know, it's not like the big moment where you see like this huge miracle. It's usually like
it's subtle. It's unplanned.
Yeah, somebody's standing by themselves. Somebody else walks over. You start talking, but like those are some of the most defining moments on a trip that I don't think people expect.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, and in those moments you always like realize you're in them, like halfway through it.
Yep.
Like you're in there, it's like talking, everything's very innocent, and you're like,
something's happening.
Yeah. You know, and there's nothing was said, nothing was done. You're just like, wait. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like we've been on this shalom thing recently. Like the way I define it, my favorite definition is everything as it should be. And that's what those moments feel like. Like you're just in Pemba, stars, like people you're really close to, and it's like, this is it. Like there's no worries, there's no cares, there's no fears, there's no desires, it's just what it is. Whoa. Like, because we barely get those moments.
And during that moment, I think like they were just finishing up an altar call. There was like hundreds of people in Portuguese, like giving their heart to the Lord. And like, there was a lot happening, but the Lord like decided to give us this little moment outside of the big picture.
Oh yeah. Well, that's like kind of like a microcosm of Farflung Trips in general, I think. As you talk about not desiring the empire, not desiring the arena, not desiring the thing. It's like you get to Pemba, you get to Barrow, you get to wherever. Like you get 500 miles down the Amazon, and it's like, man, how do you say this without sounding like a complete artistic weirdo? But like that small still voice thing, you know, it's like when you get 500 miles down the Amazon and there's no electricity and there's no amplification and there's no, you know, like that small still voice becomes very loud. Like that whisper is the only thing that's there, you know, and it's like you really find, like in that quietness, like you can really, really sense the presence.
Yeah.
You know, I think about these cultures that have like these views of the supernatural, like some of the ancient cultures, even like Mayan cultures and things and whatever. But they have those views that there's something beyond the physical. There's something, and it's like, man, when you get out to some of these places, like you really do sense like, whoa, like there's a depth to this existence that you don't get on the surface and you don't get when you're so distracted. Like, and I think that's what those moments kind of feel like, and that's what a lot of far-flung trips can do to you, because you step off a vehicle, walk a few feet, and in front of you is the frozen ocean, behind you is the frozen tundra, and there's nothing. And there's like, that's it. And you're standing there, there's no noises, just some wind. And it's like, man, like we constantly, like, I mean, let's be honest, we have a screen in front of our face until the moment we fall asleep most of the time. You know, and that's one thing being intentional about coming here, and we have like a beautiful property yard at our home, and we live in McDonald, Tennessee. And it's like, man, every once in a while I go out to put the chickens up. My life has changed over a couple years. Let's just
From
talk about
DC.
that. You're right. Like, I go out and put the chickens up, and I'm walking back in, and it's just quiet. You know, and it's like, sometimes I just stop. I'm like, it's bedtime. My wife is going to be so mad at me because I'm just standing out here. But it's like, it's so worth it. You know, just staying there and just like, take it in. Just take it in for a minute, and it's like, wow. And it's a reminder too, like maybe the reason I stop now is because I have felt it in Pimba, and I have felt it in the Amazon and in Barrow and all of these places. Like, so now I kind of got these antennas.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've kind of tuned into this thing where it's like I'm walking, I'm like, wait, there's an opportunity to have like one of those quiet moments.
Yeah.
Like to just feel the presence of God just for a second. Just to be grateful, breathe. All right. Yeah, this is it. And then kind of go back to life.
You told me you do something. You told me one time you do something. I do the same thing on a trip. Like at one point you like, sounds like we just turned into,
weird. I think I
just
know
turned into
like I
the
almost don't
most
want you to say
hippie.
it. But it's real, so whatever.
It's like on every trip, at some point where you're just kind of by yourself, you just get kneel down on the ground and like pick up the dirt, put the dirt in your hands, or just like run your fingers through the land and just like be so in the moment.
Yeah, and in almost every place we've been, Barrow's the exception because they don't have one.
I rubbed my hand on the ice.
No, there's like these trees. We sound like such hippies right now. But it's like everywhere we go, like there's usually like this tree that just like makes an impression on me.
Like we just
like,
you know, what's
took
the
edibles right before this podcast or something.
What's the show? The survival show we've been watching. Alone. When the guys are like rubbing the trees and like, I'm so sorry.
Thank you, squirrel, for this.
It's not like that, but I remember in Pimba when we ate lunch with those kids at the orphanage. Remember that huge tree?
Yeah, the boa tree.
Yeah, and it was like 1 billion degrees outside, but you could fit like 200 people under this tree. And it's like it was only made just to provide shade. And it's the only tree within the vicinity. And I just remember at one point, like everybody had walked away, and I just remember like being so grateful for like this tree. And I have like a explicit memory of me just like touching this tree and just like taking in, and it's I know it's weird, but it's like it's the same thing with the ground. Like I used to go, I don't do this much anymore, but I used to go and like take dirt and like rub it in my journal. How weird is that?
It's funny because I think it's hilarious how it sounds, and I'm also tracking with you like 100%.
Because it's like I want to take it all in. If I go somewhere
it's
and I
better
don't
than
get like
Brian takes jars of dirt and water home every trip.
right, like if I don't get the dirt on my hands and like, you know, like I just you almost feel like you haven't even been there, you know. So it's like I like to have those moments like very, very close, intimate with
Tactile.
Yeah, it is a sensory thing. It's like, I don't know. And there's I think this is another thing too. I think we work so hard most of the time not to be quote unquote like contaminated, you know, like we constantly hand sanitizer and all of those things. And it's like every once in a while, it's just nice to just like
roll around in the dirt.
It's just nice to like, you know, there's that weird, like, I don't know, we sound like super weird right now. These are things that I've never talked about. You're the only person I think I've ever mentioned this to. And it's when I on a trip, it's like, all right, I got to let this out.
That's what this podcast is going to be.
This is
all
what
the
it's
fluff
for.
is out of this. If people are still listening at the 50-minute mark, they get the real
good stuff.
And I think we
I don't know if it's even the good
maybe
stuff.
Maybe in Pimba, and it was just like, all right, I can't keep this secret anymore. I'm like, Kyle, I like touching trees when I visit places. And you were like, me too. Like, I do this. And it's like, okay, I'm not the only weird one. But, I mean, you know, not to make it deep, but I think that's like it's like funny, and I feel like an idiot, but at the same time, like it almost is like an act of worship, right? Like to appreciate and to acknowledge creation like that. So I used to feel like super weird about it, and then I thought like maybe that is like an act of worship, because I've always thought like, man, when you're standing on the mountain in the sunset and you're just overwhelmed, it's like God's up there, like like that's just that appreciation.
Being present, being completely present, and it's not weird to smell where you are and to look and to hear the sounds.
Here in like a few episodes, and I start saying the trees are God and stuff, then we've gone too far.
Then we're gonna have like 3 episodes to fix it.
Like Shintoism or something, like we've gone too far. But it's just like you said, being present and aware. Like, it's kind of like I remember when we climbed Santa Maria in Guatemala to the top of the volcano, and that stray dog followed us. We got up there and we're like, wow, look at the beauty of this. The dog's just on the ground asleep. Like, no sense of beauty, right? No appreciation. It's like a lot of times we live life like that.
I can't talk about that dog because that dog in that moment was ruined.
Yeah.
Because the last bit of food that we had that I was starving for, you gave away.
I mean, he was
to that dog
too, Will. He was hungry too.
So to you that's listening or watching on YouTube on the Far-Flung Tin Can podcast, just know that being present is a present.
This is where, like, miserable podcast, I would say we're done. Like, once you say something like that, it's over.
Just got canceled.
It's like,
all right.
Yeah. We're done?
I mean,
yes, we're done.
we've done like the things you have to pack on a trip.
I think that's coming up.
I think that's next.
Yeah, we need to do like confession, like the weird things you do, like touching trees and
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do like
devote a whole episode on stories that have never been told.
Yes.
Or things that have never been told about a trip.
Man.
Like using the bathroom at 17,000 feet.
I was about to say, like,
It's all bathroom stuff.
Yeah.
That's all. I couldn't control my bowels.
Accidentally pooped myself.
See,
That's why I got on the Amazon.
All right.
we should have stopped at present.
I told you, it's all downhill.
All right. Thanks for joining us today, and make sure to click subscribe. That can't talk. Thanks for joining us today. Wow.
Make sure to subscribe.
This is not going well.
Hey, look, the podcast is over. Click subscribe. I can't say anything. Forget it.
Hit that bell. We'll see you later.